Be the Bridge community. I am always excited to bring special guests before you. And this is actually my first time meeting this special guest, but some of you may already follow her on the Instas, um, and you may know of her work. But Sharon McMahon, wait a minute,
McMahon.
McMahon.
It's McMahon.
Okay. Sharon
Mm-hmm.
McMahon is on a mission to curate facts, fun, and inspiration by educating Americans on democracy, politics, and history. After years of serving as a high school government law teacher, Sharon took her passion for education to the Instagram. Notice I said the Instagram with a mission
The Instagram.
with a mission to combat political misinformation with nonpartisan facts. Sharon has earned a reputation as America's government teacher and quickly amassed over 1 million social media followers, affectionately known as the Governors. Governors. Sharon is also the host of the top rated podcast. Here's where it gets interesting, where each week she provides entertaining yet factual accounts of America's most fascinating moments and people. I love it. I'm telling you, I'm gonna be one of your nerds. I love it. So
Welcome.
you transitioned from teaching high school government and a law teacher. And you transitioned and you do this now over Instagram. What was what was that about? Like what led you down that
Mm,
road?
mm. Well, not to put too fine a point on it, but the 2020 election.
Okay.
Maybe you noticed,
Ye-
Latasha, maybe you noticed some misinformation floating around the interwebs during
Yes,
that time.
yes.
Just a little bit of it, just a small amount. And like one of the things that really I just kept annoying me is how confidently wrong
Mm,
so many people were. So
yes.
confident and cocky in their wrongness.
Yes.
And we're talking about things that are actually just objective facts.
Right.
Like, how does the Electoral College work? I'm not even
Yes.
asking for your opinion on it. You know what I mean? Just, it's an objective fact.
Right.
Here's how it works. I started noticing so
Mm,
many people who were confidently wrong about objective facts that I decided to start making some little explainer videos, thinking that instead of arguing in the comments with a bunch of people, which we all know, arguing with strangers on the internet is you might as well just light minutes of your life on
right.
fire with a match,
Right.
right? Like, that's not useful.
Right.
Um, so I have a policy of not doing that. I'm not going to argue with strangers.
Mhm.
But if I make some little explainer videos that are easy to understand, short, simple, to the point, they don't name candidate names. They're not telling you who to vote for. They're not telling you, this person's good, this person's bad. Maybe somebody would find them useful, and they could drop a link in, a social media comment where they're like, just check this video out. This will explain how it works.
Yes.
So that's really the short answer. Is I started making little videos to combat things that all the Chads and the Brads that were confidently wrong on the Instagrams.
I mean, confidently wrong. I mean, I see it all the time.
Confidently
I'm like,
wrong.
you said that with
Yes.
such confidence, and any
So much audacity.
just a Google research, even in just a pausing, you will realize that you are so wrong. Yeah,
So wrong.
I
There
had
was
a.
one guy,
Okay, go ahead.
I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say there's this one guy who was like, um, when we're speaking, going back to the Electoral College, he was talking about the Electoral College campus. And I was like, hold up, okay? It is not a place. There's no campus. You can't visit it. Have you ever seen anyone standing in front of the sign that says the Electoral College? It's not a place you can go, Chad.
Oh my
It's
God.
not. But they're so confident, and it's really, I bet you will understand. It gets really annoying.
Yeah. And I can relate in some
Mm-hmm.
ways because I am, you see, I paused before I said your name because I wanted to make sure that I pronounced it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Because I am notorious. And I had an old boss that said, he said, you, like, I would say, I said, yeah, the person's name is Shannon. And everybody knows that the person's name is Sharon. But I said
Mm-hmm.
Shannon, and he said, you say it with such confidence that I start questioning the knowledge that I have. And that's how
Mm-hmm.
this works in a sense. Like sometimes when people
Mm-hmm.
are so wrong, and they say it, they repeat it over and over again, which is kind of like psychological warfare, really. That is a
Mm-hmm.
tactic. If I give you the wrong information and keep repeating the wrong information to you over and over again, eventually you're not going to know what to believe, and so that confusion
Mm-hmm.
allows you to believe either what I'm saying or maybe believe nothing at all. And so,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, we're falling for what I call the okey doke. You ever heard of that, Sharon?
Mm-hmm.
Okey doke.
Mm-mm. Tell
I
me.
just
Tell
taught
me.
you something. Let me just tell you. When
Mm-hmm.
I
I
when
love
you
it.
can't make it make sense, I just say, why are we falling for the okey doke? I don't know where I got that from. I think it was from a little kid growing around. It's probably slang. No telling where the history came from. But I just like don't fall for the okey doke. Like don't fall for the lies, the craziness.
Mm.
Don't be misled. That's kind of like what you say.
Mm.
And then it's like you're trying
Mm-hmm.
to make it
Mm-hmm.
make sense. So and we can't make it
Mm-hmm.
make
Mm-hmm.
sense. So you were just talking. I know we were just talking about the Tennessee state legislature, and I think there's a lot of
Mm.
things when it comes to government that we really don't understand. A lot of us are far removed
Mm-hmm.
from college. A lot of us are far removed from high school, and I know what are some of the things, and I know this is historic, but why is this something we really need to pay attention to? What's happening in Tennessee?
Mm.
I want you to repeat
Mm.
that again for me.
Mm. Mm. Well, here's the thing is that humans are naturally predisposed
Hmm.
to want to seek and consolidate power for
Yeah,
themselves. Right?
yeah.
Like that is something that humans will naturally try to do.
Hmm.
And democracy requires that we guard against it, that we guard against the corrupt consolidation and seeking of power. So these are the kinds of things that we all have to pay attention to. It doesn't matter if you live in Tennessee or not. I don't live there.
Hmm.
But to me, this is a very, very important moment in United States history. We truly do stand at the precipice between, where we have to decide which way will we turn? Will we
Right.
turn towards democracy or away from it? Will we turn towards authoritarianism
Right.
or towards democracy?
Right.
And if we want to maintain our system of democracy, if we want a system that is based on equality, if we want a system that is based on the rule of law, if we want a system that is based on justice,
Hmm.
we cannot afford to look away when things like this happen. We can't afford to just be like, you know what, sometimes that happens. That's exactly how power continues to be corrupted and consolidated.
Yeah.
We have to hold power to account.
Yeah.
So we all have to care about this.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. Sharon, I would love for you because, sometimes I really, as I'm out there and seeing different things, I really believe because we're seeing so many things that are um, so far from democracy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I want you to define that, not redefine it, but define what democracy is, because I feel
mm,
like we've forgotten. Because I mean, there's some things that has happened in our country, especially, just as recent as everything, the insurrection on January 6th. I
mm-hmm,
would love for you just to explain what does this democracy mean, um,
mm,
and what does it mean to each you and I. You know?
mm, mm. Yeah. So, I mean, democracy, here's the thing. maybe you've heard this before, but people tell this to me all the time. We don't have a democracy. We have a constitutional republic. I hear people say that all of the time, right? And just to kind of get this part out of the way, a constitutional republic is a structure of government that by definition is democratic. You cannot have a constitutional republic without democracy. And that is because a democracy in the original Greek is just a government of the people. That is the foundation of what democracy means. Now, if you start thinking about the principles of democracy, which is something that I think is very important for Americans to sort of absorb, hide in their hearts, because to me, understanding the principles of democracy allow you to be an educated voter. They allow you to be an educated consumer. We need to know what these things are. So just to make it very, very simple and easy to remember, one of the things that I think is, I try to break it down to like 5 different things. The first one is fair and free elections and the peaceful transfer of power. The peaceful transfer of power is unique to democracies. Think about kings. They didn't. How did you get a different king? Well, you killed the other one. Right? You just you seized power. You seized power. In a democracy, there is no seizure of power. There is a peaceful transfer of power. If you want to be in power, you have to win a fair and free election. The second thing I think is important to remember is protection of civil rights. Civil rights are guaranteed to people in our democracy. They're protected by the Constitution. They're protected by other federal laws. And examples of civil rights are things like the right to be free from unlawful discrimination, the right to vote. So protection of civil rights, even if they are not your civil rights, are a very important component of democracy. And that civil rights are protected for everyone. They are not protected just for people who are part of the dominant group. The third thing is equality of persons. That's a fancy way of just saying equality. People are equal, and we have the rule of law. We do not have a group that is above the law. We do not have a group where, the leaders don't have to follow the laws, but everybody else does. If you think about fascist systems, leaders don't have to follow the laws, everyone else does. In a democracy, we do not have some citizens that have to follow the laws and some citizens that don't. Everyone does, including the leaders. So holding leaders to account, holding power to account is an important part of a well-functioning democracy. And I know people are going to listen to this and be like, but we don't do that perfectly. We don't do it perfectly. We absolutely do not. These are just the bedrock principles to which we should aspire, right? So the fourth thing is consent of the governed and limited government. There are things the government cannot do, that it does not have the power to do, and the government exists because, again, the power of the government comes from the people. So we think about limited government, meaning that there are things that the government is prohibited by law from restricting. We think about things like they're prohibited by law from restricting your freedom of religion. The government is limited. Think back to England, where when the monarch changed, the religion of the country had to change. It was Protestant, Catholic, Catholic. You had to align with the monarch. A limited government does not allow the government to make those kinds of rules about, religion is just one example of many. And then the last thing is checks and balances and the separation of powers. This speaks to this thing that I was just talking about, that the humans naturally seek to want to consolidate power. They naturally seek to want to gain power for themselves. Humans are naturally kind of selfish. And on the other side, humans can be amazing and unselfish. But we all know this natural human tendency of absolute power corrupts absolutely. So that those checks and balances and separation of powers keeps power from being consolidated in the hands of a despot. consolidated in the hands of somebody who wants to rule the country with a tyrannical iron fist. So we spread power out so one person does not become an authoritarian dictator. So those are sort of my high level principles of democracy, that we have equality, we have fair and free elections, we have the rule of law, we have peaceful transfer of power, we have things like separation of power, checks and balances, and limited government.
Right. So good. Thank you so much. You took us to school. And this is why those things that this is a part of a democracy, and I, as an African American, am part of that democracy. And so this is why we've had to have the civil rights movement, and and amendments to our Constitution to be inclusive of persons of color, and specifically me as an African American, speaking to that. And I was just watching. There's this documentary called Lowndes County. And I don't know if you've seen it. It's on, it's either on Hulu or Prime, on one of those streaming channels. But it talks about, there's this county in Alabama that after the Voting Rights Act was passed, there are still communities, especially rural communities in the South, who still did not allow people to vote, or they would discourage you from voting because if you worked on their farm, if you were a sharecropper, it was like a form of oppression that you would not vote, or if you voted, you had to vote for their candidate, or you couldn't also run for office. And so Lowndes County is really about how when you say Black Power came into being, where that movement started there, that we don't hear about. And so as I'm listening to you, and as you explain this, a lot of us, when we see that it's not happening, what is our role? What are things that we can do to be heard? I see, I'm looking at historically, people have marched, people have organized, but I think what is happening, even in our community, as I'm talking to different Be the Bridge leaders across the country, they get so fearful that they're stuck. And there are a lot of people that are listening now, they see this, or either they're in denial that what they're seeing, it couldn't be, because we can kind of be deflecting because of our denial. What can people do to really make sure that mistakes that we make will not have grave consequences over the years? I look back and I see that throughout our country where we've done that. I think about the Hayes Compromise. That was a grave mistake for our country. It set us back so many years. No telling where we can be in 2023 if that decision had not been made. But what are some things? Let's motivate people. I want to see people move. I want to see people give us some marching orders. What can we do to make our voices heard? And not just be reactive, but proactive, and not just waiting for something to happen before we get in before we move.
Totally. I love this question because the answer is that there are many things that we can do. And I want to encourage people to think about that not all of us are meant to do the same thing.
Very good.
And so when we think about how big the problems are, they seem overwhelming, and we feel stuck by I can't fix poverty. How am I supposed to sit here and just fix poverty? Right. That's too big of a problem, right? I can't fix that entire thing. So we then tend to do nothing. So one of the things I want people to think of is, number one, if the problem seems too big and you feel overwhelmed, you need to make the problem smaller.
Yes.
You need to bring the problem down to a level that you feel that you can do even one thing about. if I can show up in one way, think about what can I do for one person that I wish that I could do for everybody? Or what can I do for one organization that I wish that I could do for everybody? So make the problem smaller. Start with your local community. Don't try to get out there and be like, me alone, I'm fixing poverty, because you are going to fail. And then you're going to give up.
Right.
And you're going to just you're going to make no positive change in the world. So that's the first thing. It is absolutely not just expected, but it is desirable that we should all use our own gifts in different ways as part of this movement. Some of us are gifted speakers. Some of us are gifted writers. Some of us are good at organization. Some of us are great at baking cookies to keep people fed. Some of us are really, we have tons of money. Some of us have huge social media platforms. So we all have a different role, and that is, we are all needed. So don't feel like because I'm not as good as that person, I shouldn't take part. I'm not as good a writer as Latasha is. I can't possibly lend my voice. All of our voices are needed. So all that to say, don't get bogged down in the problem being too big and other people being better at it than you are. We need all of us. To move the ball down the field, so to speak. So the first thing I would say to people is becoming educated on this topic is the foundation of being able to take action on it. If you are a heart surgeon, you have to know the intricacies of the human heart so well before you can operate on it. Right? Before you can make any changes to it, you have to know it inside and out. So first of all, educating ourselves so that we know what the ideals are inside and out, and we can easily recognize when there is a problem. That's what, a physician is able to do. They're able to say, this heart's not working properly, and here's why, because they know it so intricately. So educating ourselves on the principles of democracy, I think, are an important thing. The second thing is being willing to let go of partisanship when it comes to things like democracy. A lot of times people become very wedded to this idea that I am, I'm a blue voter, I'm a red voter. And in reality, if we don't have democracy, it doesn't matter what letter is behind somebody's name. It does not matter if that person feels the same as you do on abortion. It does not matter if we don't have democracy. So the principles of democracy must come before any party allegiance, any allegiance to a candidate, any allegiance to a preferred policy. The highest allegiance must be to democracy itself when it comes to politics in the United States. And if we have a candidate who is, saying the things we want to hear, but does not uphold the principles of democracy that I just laid out for us, then they are not a candidate that is worthy of leadership in this country. So educating ourselves and voting for people for whom democracy is a very high priority, those are also key things that we can do. But speaking to some, non-political things, it seems very overwhelming to think about, but I called my representative and nothing happened, right? I called and nothing happened. I was recently in Washington, D.C. for the State of the Union, and I visited a number of congressional offices, and I asked everybody that worked in those offices, how many calls and letters does it take for you to feel like, dang, people care about this issue? What's the threshold for you to start feeling like, we got some pushback on this topic? All of them said somewhere in the neighborhood of, if we got 200 calls or letters on something, that would be like an emergency crisis about that topic. And I was like, you mean to tell me that 200 people, that's the threshold for lighting a fire under you? It's 200 people? And, in a short period of time, we can come up with 200 people. right? Like we can come up with 200 people just by posting about it on social media, talking about it in our schools or churches or clubs or wherever we know people. The people that we know 200 people. We can create systemic change with enough people being willing to call and email and write to the people that represent them in Congress. So 200 people to me is a very eye-opening number. Now, it doesn't mean that one person in Congress or one person in your legislature is going to unilaterally be able to swoop in and be like, I fixed it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that number of people multiplied around the country, that is a tiny number of Americans, actually. That's a tiny number of Americans creating a huge amount of systemic change. So you think, again, stop thinking about the problem as this problem that is insurmountable and start thinking about, like, what is the next thing I can do? Can me and my friends mobilize 200 people to call this individual? You probably can. So that's another option. But the other thing that I think is really important to do is to continue your own individual advocacy for things.
Okay, sure.
Because even if you feel like nothing is happening, even if you feel like I called, I wrote, I voted, I ran for office, I donated money, even if you feel like I have done all of the things, hopelessness in this topic of equality, hopelessness in this topic of amending some of the righting some of the wrongs in this country. Hopelessness is an option we cannot afford. We cannot afford to be hopeless. We must maintain hope in the face of adversity. We must maintain hope in the face of insurmountable obstacles, because otherwise nothing will change. Most of the civil rights movement, Latasha, we're talking about women. We're talking about teenagers. We're talking about church secretaries. We're talking about people, many of whom did not finish high school, who kept going, no matter the obstacles. And we have that exact same ability, and we have far more tools now than they did 60 years ago. We have far more resources, more tools. We can keep going just like our ancestors kept going in the face of incredible odds. And it is the only way that change will happen, is we have to just decide. I don't have the luxury of being hopeless. I do not. That is a price that I cannot pay. I will, like Brian Stevenson says, hope is not a feeling. It is an orientation of the spirit. It is an orientation of the spirit that we must choose to remain hopeful in the face of incredible odds. So to me, it is always thinking about, all of those things, and always realizing that we each have our own unique individual place in this tapestry, and embracing what yours is. It's not your problem to fix alone, but it doesn't mean you get to do nothing.
Yeah, so good. You're like all in our Be the Bridge talk. I mean, this is the things that we say all the time. Do your part. It's not the whole part. We're only a part of the solution. And I think even when I recount the story of Start and Be the Bridge, it was like this problem was so overwhelming for me, when you start talking about justice, and you start talking about the history of that, and where this goes back to. I couldn't even get my head around it, but my commitment was, I'm going to do the things that I know to do, or the things that I can do. And those were have conversations. And just looking at what people say, your Judea, your community, starting there. And then, committing to that and being faithful to that. This is the fruit that we're looking at now, having Be the Bridge groups, and in every state, some type of engagement in every state in our country, and also, internationally. If I would have started out saying, okay, I'm going to do this, in every state, I would have stopped.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
I didn't have the tools to do that. I didn't have the tools to do it. But
That's right.
connecting with other people and other tools and other resources allow it to grow. So what you're saying, you
Mhm.
guys do not miss what she's saying, because I hear so many people that are getting overwhelmed, and so they're getting stuck, or they're paralyzed to this point where they're not doing anything, and
Mhm.
and we can't afford not to do anything. And I think
Mhm.
this is just so good, and I love how you talk about principle over party. Because
Mhm.
some of the
Mhm.
things I'm thinking, like, I don't care who's most of this stuff. When you talk about green and look, I can't even say that. Like, um, blue and red, but I'm just
Mhm.
saying,
Mhm.
like, green, whatever affiliation or party you're affiliated with, those things are meaningless at the end of the day. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying?
They
Like,
are.
it's gonna burn.
Mhm.
And so really making sure that principle over party is one of an
Mhm.
important motto for you. Now, one of the things in our organization, and I don't know how much you know about Be the Bridge. I don't know if you've read the book, but we value truth, and truth is like, I mean, it has become watered down in a lot of ways, and we know that the work that we do is grounded in truth. Um, but it seems like a lot of people cannot in this country can agree what the truth of our country is, the truth of live the spirits of a person of color. So maybe we can talk a little bit about, when we start talking about the banning of books. Like, I'm not going to get into details of like all the books that are being banned, but there's just a couple that just caught my eye, and I'm like, wow. The Ruby Bridges one that just, the movie, the book, cast, just some of the ones that really relate to our racial history here. Those are the things that it's like, why are we doing this? Why do you think people are afraid of children learning, hard things? And then why do they think all of these things are just going to come from a library when we have access to all of this online? But I know the first introduction, it depends on where you live. Everybody doesn't have the same resources. So that first introduction sometimes, is at school. But I remember growing up, this is not in North Carolina. We didn't really learn full American history. And I want to say full American history because Black history is American history. Indigenous
Yes,
history
it is.
is
That is
American
right.
history. So anyway, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I totally agree. I didn't grow up learning in northern Minnesota. We had a couple lessons in February. Like we maybe like, oh, let's talk
Mm-hmm.
about Booker T. Washington. Like maybe there were a couple little extra things, but it was mostly about George Washington. And, I totally agree with you that I had that experience as well, that I was not taught the full breadth of American history
Mm-hmm.
until I became an adult. And I think that's a very common experience in the United States today. The good news is we can become educated on this. And I think there is a strong movement in your community and my community where we want our children to grow up better than we had. We don't want to be a 34-year-old adult where you're like, "What? I have never heard of Ida B. Wells
I
before."
know, right?
Like you don't want to be that person, right? You want your kids to grow up knowing the truth. Um so I do think that, I mean, first of all, there is a long history in the United States of trying to ban books. That is not a new thing. And it has never been on the right side of history. Movements to ban books has never been on the right side of history. It has always been associated with dictators, with white supremacists. It has always been associated with Nazis. It has always been associated with segregationists. There has never been a time that we can point to where we're like, that was a really smart move and it made things better. right? So historically speaking, banning books has never worked out, and the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So it's never worked out. The idea, first of all, there are going to be books that have ideas that you don't like. I promise you, there already are. There already are. There are already books that I'm like, I do not know about that. And that is, you know what I mean? Like, that's not unusual. Welcome to living in a democracy. So that is the idea, though, that some things must be kept hidden from our children. That is the idea that is very, very problematic. It's not that the children will never encounter something that they disagree with. They will. They will encounter something they disagree with. The idea that, first of all, children cannot absorb complicated or difficult things is patently false. It is a very privileged take on the world that children must be, we must protect them from things that are difficult. We don't want them to think about things that are difficult. That is a privilege that has only been afforded to certain groups, right? Other groups have never had the luxury of saying the children can't know about hard things. So that is, first of all, the idea that children have to be kept from knowing the reality of history is rooted in privilege. We have to understand that. Secondly, children actually are capable of understanding age-appropriate, challenging concepts. No, first of all, let's just put it on the table. Nobody is saying get your kids a subscription to Playboy. Nobody's advocating for that, right? Like that's not on the table here. We're talking about teaching about real Americans, real events, things that actually happened. These are things that children are made better by wrestling with. You cannot learn critical thinking without being confronted with ideas you disagree with. There's no critical thinking in hearing something you already believe. There's no critical thinking involved in that. You are just parroting back what you already think. If you want to raise critical thinkers, they have to be confronted with difficult things, difficult moral dilemmas, difficult events from the past. That actually improves their ability to think critically, to be empathetic to others, to understand the impact of actions throughout the world. If when we do X, this is what's happened in the past. We can't do X again. Trying to hide those kinds of things from children only has a detrimental effect. I have talked to so many people, and when I say so many, I mean hundreds of people who grow up to be adults, who realize like I have never learned any of this stuff, who feel robbed, who feel lied to, who feel cheated. And it has not made them better to not know the full account of American history. Children are more capable than we realize. And there are many, many benefits to learning the truth. And no benefits to learning lies.
And I think it stokes fear, and one of the things that I've seen in just all the trainings that we do and the talks that we do, if I had, $5 for every time someone said, I never knew that, or I wish I had known that, because it gives the truth gives people context to a lot of the gaps and the brokenness, and it helps it make sense to them, like, oh my goodness. And just when you look on the faces of people, regardless of, if this is a person of color or a white person, it's like, I knew I wasn't crazy, or I'm so glad I know this. And I will never forget she was in her 80s. She came up to me and she caught my attention. She was in this training. She caught my attention because she had a cell phone. She had an Apple cell phone, and she was like doing something on it. And I was just like impressed, like I want to be her, at 80. And she came up to me at the end of the class and she grabbed my hand, and I didn't know what was going to happen. So many things went through my head. I was like, what if she hits me? What if she, what am I going to do? Like, I'm telling you, I think like this, I think like this. And she grabbed my hand and she said, thank you. And she said, "Thank you for telling me this. I wish I would have known."
Mhm.
And she was just really passionate about this. She was saying things that she heard she had never heard, and it makes so much sense where she had been disconnected. Of course, living in homogenous circles and communities, there was just information
Mhm.
and context she was missing. And
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
her knowing this information was going to make her better because of it.
Totally.
You know,
Yes. Yes. It doesn't mean, here's the thing about knowing the truth of history. You're not going to like it. Okay, let me just tell you right now. There's some good stories, there's some touching stories, there's some cats rescued by a firefighter. Like sure, those things happen.
right?
But by and large, you are not going to like it. But you are going to be glad that you know it.
Mm,
You are going to be better for having learned it.
yeah,
I don't know anybody uh, who has studied these topics in depth who's like, gee, I sure am sorry I know the truth. I've never had those words
right.
spoken to me. I'm sure I'm sorry I learned the truth. No, you can't build pride on a lie. Right? Like, if we want to be proud of our country, if we
Hmm.
want to be, proud to be Americans, that can't be predicated on a lie.
Mm,
We need to know the truth so that we
right.
can actually build from here.
Yeah,
So knowing the truth is important.
yeah,
And when you look at the list of books that are getting banned in school libraries, some of them seem so innocuous. It's like, who is Michelle Obama?
yeah,
It's just like a little children's biography for like a fourth grader. Do you know what I mean? There's no there's no like overthrow the government kind of
yes,
messages in this book. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, who is Sonia Sotomayor? These are actually two books that were actually both banned. She is a Hispanic Supreme Court justice. Like
yeah,
that's a person that we all should know who that is,
yeah,
right? These are little children's biographical books that are being banned for Lord only knows what reason.
yeah.
But
Well, we know what
it's
reason.
it's short sighted.
We know what reason. And
We know what
yeah,
reason, but I don't know what reason they use to
yeah,
justify it.
yeah.
Like, what is your reason you're
Yes,
going with here?
yes. And I
Yeah.
will say the reason is racism. We're creating
Mm.
this system because if you're not banning all the books by the Supreme Court judges and
Mhm.
you're only
Mhm.
banning the ones where people of color, it's just
Mhm.
so overt right now. Before,
Mhm.
when we talk about racism, it was more covert, but it's like you're, just I was just listening to a clip of something that was on a news station, and it was this rant, and it was like laced in racism. It was like a comment that was made back in the 50s, and
Mhm.
people
Mhm.
are ignoring it.
Mhm.
I've seen it.
Mhm.
Like I've seen people, these things get ignored. Where someone said this person gets dropped from every newspaper, and someone else
Mm.
tweeted it out and said, "I don't see a lie in what this person said." And the government is still doing business with this person. And I'm just like,
Mm.
and I
Mhm.
take it
Mhm.
personal
Mhm.
because a lot of it is attacks on my community. One of the things that
Mhm.
I saw, and I know we're going to have to wrap up in a little bit, but I wanted to hear you said after a white supremacist terror attack at the grocery store in Buffalo last year, it's so much has
Mhm.
happened. We've had
Mhm.
so many violent attacks in our country that some things feel like it happened 5 years ago when it just
I
happened
know.
last year. Buffalo
I know.
seems so distant. That
Mhm.
that poor community. There's so much that has happened there, even just this year
Mhm.
along with the snowstorms and everything. But
Mhm.
you in the post you said, I don't care which political party you belong to. It is your job to reject racism in your party. And you say
That's right.
anti-racism is something we all have to commit to doing. And I
Mhm.
agree. Like it's like this veil has been uncovered, and it's like it's almost in trend to be racist again, where before there was
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
some shame to it.
Mm-hmm.
And before, where, you know, fighting racism and discrimination was more of a bipartisan thing. Now you can see the split straight down, you know, party lines. And I don't care what party you belong to. It is your responsibility to reject it and
Mm-hmm.
to commit to it. Why do you feel so passionate about that? And why do you know that that is the right thing for all Americans to do?
Mm, mm. Well, first of all, racism is wrong,
Yeah.
right? So it's wrong.
Right.
So it's morally wrong. So it should be your job to reject morally wrong things
Mm.
from your political party. If
Mm.
it's not your job to reject morally wrong things from your political party, whose job is it?
Right.
Like, it's your party,
Right.
right?
Right.
You picked it.
Right. Right.
It is your job.
Right.
So it is your job.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, this is you know, an example of how the need to fix something
Mm.
is our collective responsibility.
Mm.
I cannot be on this podcast and be like, well, I fixed it. I fixed the racism. You know what I mean? Like, maybe somebody will have a little change of heart, but we're not going to end this today and be like, well, it's been fixed. You know what I mean?
Right.
This is not just my job. It's not just your job. We're out here doing, you know, we're working hard on it.
Right.
But the idea that this is all of our job. This is our collective responsibility.
So good.
That we must all commit to.
Yeah.
Racism has never led us to a destination worth going to. It has never led us to a destination worth going to. Say it again for the people in the back, Sharon. It's not taking us anywhere we want to go. It's not cute. It's not pretty. There's not a picnic area. There is literally nothing there worth visiting. And we all have to collectively be like, we are not going there. We're not going there. We're not going on that journey. It's just a no from me. Level 10 out of 10. It's not happening. So this idea that sometimes racism is okay. Sometimes, you know, like, oh, well, we don't want to rock the boat too much. That tends to be a feeling that people feel like, oh, I don't want to get attacked. I don't want to get attacked if I say something. Guess what? You are going to get attacked.
Exactly.
You will be attacked. You will. It has happened to me every time I've posted about it. I've gotten attacked. Doesn't matter what I say, how nicely I say it. People are going to say something to you. Say it anyway. Say it anyway. Lay your head on the pillow at night, knowing that you did right.
Yes.
And if somebody attacked you for doing right, then you can go to sleep with a clear conscience.
Yeah.
Right? You can go to sleep knowing that you did right and the other person did
Yeah.
wrong. It has never been a good idea.
Yeah.
And it remains not a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a little, you know, that post that I put up about Buffalo, about the Buffalo mass shooter, he had, you know, sort of this manifesto where he was talking about replacement theory, that there are people of color coming to replace the rightful Americans, and I'm saying that in air quotes, the rightful Americans.
Right.
I literally earlier today, Latasha, saw somebody on Twitter, a video of a legislator, I believe it was the state of Kansas, it was either Kansas or Nebraska, talking about how this state has not had any population growth except for all of the immigrants that are moving here. All of the, you know, he was essentially saying all of the brown people that are moving here. The white people's population has not been growing. And that's exactly what replacement theory looks like. That the white people are being replaced, again, air quotes, by people of color. That he's not going to go on TV and say, like, hello, I'm here to speak to you about replacement theory. Right? You know, like, it's coded. And once you learn the code, you will recognize it wherever it is. So this idea that people from certain countries that other, you know, some politicians refer to it by negative names. I won't repeat on this podcast. I'm sure you can figure out what they are. The idea that some people are valuable and other people are less
Right,
valuable
right,
is replacement theory. And that we
right.
should encourage the valuable people to
Mm,
be here.
mhm.
That's an idea that we have to just reject outright.
Yeah, yeah,
It has never led us anywhere we want to go.
yeah. Because even someone's definition of who's valuable and who's not, history always gives an account. And as we say in this work, history keeps receipts. And there's going to be
Mm-hmm.
a lot of history that's not going to be favorable to people, of things that you're going to want. You're not going to want kids to learn about in history because we have a record account, more so now than we did then, of things that are being
Mm-hmm.
said, things that are being posted, tweeted, written about, books that are being written. Like, people are saying these things boldly now. And it's contributing to things like, this mass shooter, murderer in Buffalo, it's contributing to those ideologies. And some of these ideologies are not just, you know, in a person like him that's considered a white supremacist, but these things are in some of the highest places of governments where they're saying the exact same things, holding political office, saying the exact same thing, but saying it not with a gun in hand, but with the suit on,
And with the
and
microphone.
and with the
With the microphone.
microphone, and I think, a lot of people who are listening now, they're overwhelmed with what's happening in politics. I always tell people, listen, the work that we do is about politics because politics is about people.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be partisan. We're making it
Mm-hmm.
partisan. It should be bipartisan. But the work that we do, politics are about people, and I hear this a lot where people are always saying, we just, we don't want to get political. We don't get political. And I'm like, everything that has been done to people of color in this country has been done politically. It's been done through
Mm-hmm.
policy. So the undoing of that also will have to come through policy, and
Mm-hmm.
I would hope it could be bipartisan, but that is not something that we're seeing the fruit of, in this very tenuous time within our country. And so there are people
Mm-hmm.
that are just overwhelmed. They really want to give up, you know. What would you say? What encouragement would you have for our Be the Bridge community, when they hear things like this? I think people were a little
Mm-hmm.
encouraged to see these young men being able to stand firm in their belief systems, and making it about people that happen in Tennessee. And we know that there are people like that all over this country. And I think people were inspired by them. And so, what are some encouragements that you have, and steps
Mm-hmm.
to take for the Be the Bridge community?
Mm-hmm. Sometimes when I feel overwhelmed,
Okay.
and I bet you can relate to this, right? Like sometimes you're like, I just don't know if I can keep doing
Yeah.
this. I
Yeah.
just do not know. It can be a lot. You're like,
Hmm.
who am I to do this? This sort of refrain echoes in my mind sometimes, which is that it's not the equipped that are called.
Mm.
The people who are called are equipped.
Yes.
And the people who are called are all of us,
Mm.
right? And
Right.
we can and will be equipped to do this work.
Hmm.
It is not the people who are equipped that are being called. It is the called who will be equipped. So, and there are ways that we can equip ourselves. We've talked about some of them on this show today, but I keep reminding yourself that you do not need to be equipped today. Your capacity today might be really small. Your capacity today might be calling a friend and saying, the world's been heavy lately. I wanted to check in on you. How are you doing?
Right.
That might be your capacity today. But as you become more equipped, your capacity can increase incrementally. It's just like you were saying, Latasha. If you had said, well, you're going to have people in every single state, you'd be like, well, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know if I can do it.
Oh, time out, I quit.
Yeah. That's too much.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not trying to, that's too much.
Yeah.
But you didn't start this journey with this idea of like, well, I'm equipped. I got all the answers.
Right.
You were called.
Right.
And your capacity has increased as you have become more and more equipped to do this work.
Right.
Your capacity can increase as you learn and as you change and as you grow and as you mature and as you meet more people and as you realize, well, that didn't work. I'm going to try this other thing. Your capacity is not a static thing. It can grow. It can become bigger than you ever imagined. Again, going back to the leaders of the civil rights movement, they did not come out of their mother's womb being like, well, I am called. Like, I'm equipped. I got it. No, they had a calling and they became equipped as they lived out their calling. Right? They did not learn how to do these things as tiny children. Right. No one was educating them on how to make massive political change in the United States because it had never been done before. They had to invent it, right? They had to invent it. They were called. And then they became equipped as they lived out their calling. So do not feel discouraged if your capacity today is small. We will use whatever your capacity is. Maybe you just gave birth to twin babies and you're like, I slept 1 hour last night. My capacity is really, really small. That is okay. Your capacity will change as those babies get bigger. And you can start taking your children to events and you can start teaching your children. And your ability and your capacity will grow. So start where you are and realize you don't actually need to be equipped. You have been called. And your capacity will increase as you do the work.
Yeah. And I can say I'm a living witness of that, and so many others that are, doing this work, we're doing our small portion of it. There's a lot of ways to do this work. This is only one way, and there's no right way, and so I think, the thing is, we always tell people is to do something. I say, if you have breath in your body, you can do something. And something. And
that's right.
And you can start somewhere, And so, and we always tell people, start with yourself and then start with your family. Start with your community and just kind of work your way out. Just take it like one step at a time. But just make sure you're not sitting on the sidelines, because we are moving this ship. We're going to move this ship. We're not giving up. And, how I think I heard one of the young men said, you've woken a sleeping giant, But listen, let me tell you, none of us have been asleep. The writing has been on the wall for some time. I think it's some of the tears that people cried back in 2015 and 2016 that we saw a shift coming, and so we're dealing with that. And so, as we close now, what is something I like to ask this question? What is something, Sharon, that's giving you hope right now? What is something that's giving you hope? And then also, what is something that's bringing you joy?
One of the things that always brings me hope is learning about history. There are so many, of course, there's terrible events that have happened in history, but there is, a great cloud of witnesses of people who have done and overcome extraordinary things that are waiting for us to be, as our community that we can look to. We don't have the community in our own lives and in our own organizations. There is no shortage of people who have done extraordinary things in history. And I read their stories and I am just like, dang, I don't even know if I have that amount of courage.
Wow.
I don't know if I have that courage. And it gives me hope that there are people who have done more, risen farther, been more courageous than any opportunity I've ever been given to be a part of. So history brings me hope because I see exactly how much of a difference a single individual can make.
Yeah.
So
That's so
I love
good.
that. I love reading about how one person has impacted the world.
Yeah.
So, and one thing that is bringing me joy, of course, I always have joy in my own children and my own dogs and my own, little house in the woods. Like those are always things that make me happy. But one of the things that brings me joy on a regular basis is the governor community. I love seeing people whose first response is, how can we help? What can we do? Where can we donate? Who should we call?
Right.
Like seeing the motivation of, over 1 million people who are like, I am going to be the change. That to me, it brings me joy. It brings me joy to see how many people actually want to be part of the solution and to show up and to do the work and to be the bridge.
Yeah,
I love it.
I love it. I love it. And we are an equipping organization, just like yourself. You're equipping people with context, with history, with facts, with knowledge that's going to bring about change. And that's what we do. So we are partners in this. Thank you
Yes.
so much for joining us
My
today.
pleasure.
Expect to hear from us even more, because this is working, and it's happening, one person at a time, one group at a time, but we see a lot of fruit from this work. And I think that's what some of this resistance is about when we look at some of the reverting back, is because there's a fear of a loss of power, because people are more knowledgeable and we do have more access to information, and we are we are more convicted when we think about, like, we are just some of the basic biblical principles of loving your neighbor as yourself, like that right there alone, just that statement, loving your neighbor as yourself. And it doesn't say which neighbor. The things that are happening now should be very convicting to those of us that call ourselves Christians. And so I'm thankful for your voice. I'm thankful for all that you're doing on social media and using it for good. I always say that, there's a lot of different ways to use social media. And I see time and time again people who are using social media for good, to educate, to bring about restoration, to lift up, to empower. And I see that's what you're doing, Sharon. So thank you so much, sister, for being in this work and for using your voice and for speaking the truth and speaking facts. And even in the midst of fear of what people will say, comments people will make, that you're still going to speak the truth. And I think that's the thing. We have to keep going. We cannot give up. We got to keep pressing, keep pressing, keep pressing. I keep thinking about this. This keeps coming to mind, that Harriet Tubman kept returning to the South. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, I don't know. Once I had tasted freedom, I don't know if I could have gone back. But that means that enslavement was so horrifying that she was willing to risk her life time and time again for the freedom of others. And so we have to keep going. This gun violence, all of that these are tough things that we're having to deal with in our society. But we have to keep speaking the truth and keep pressing and keep pushing and keep pressing and keep pushing each and every day. So thank you so much for joining me. And it was a pleasure to have you here on the Be the Bridge podcast.
Likewise.
And we're going to have everything is going to be in show notes. So those of you who are listening, if this is your first time of hearing Sharon McMahon, we're going to have all her information. You want to follow her on the social, Instagram, all of these things, and you can take notes and teach it to your children and make sure that even as people are limiting history that is being taught, that you as a parent, you as an auntie, you as a grandparent, you as a friend or a neighbor can make sure that the children in your life, the people in your life, have access to factual, historical information. And so
That's right.
thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.